Hey, it's Autumn fronting at the moment. I'm going to see if I can film this all in one go. I'm not that comfortable in front of the camera still, but we're talking about something I'm really passionate about, so hopefully that will help. I am an extremely avid reader. I love to read. I love to read just about everything. At the moment, I lost a lot of my books, especially books I had growing up. So I've been buying old kids fiction that I used to love and reading that, in addition to reading new things. So I've mentioned my husband enough that everyone knows I'm married. We got married in late December, and that meant he moved in, and my book collection increased because he had a lot of books. He's not a very avid reader, but old textbooks he had, fiction books, a lot of Stephen King, just books that he was interested in. They made their way into my collection. So I jokingly call it a New Year's resolution. I don't traditionally do New Year's resolutions, so it is somewhat of a joke, but my goal is to not own a book that either me or someone in the system has read. So we stacked all the books I haven't read on our dresser, which this is our current count. It is a lot of books. And once an altar reads them, we alphabetize them onto our bookshelf. Well, that's the plan. The bookshelf is already full. We need more bookshelves. The goal is actually for future videos, for future filming for this, to film in front of the dresser. So in front of that backdrop of books is going to be the goal. And I'm really excited about that. But this was a somewhat last minute video and we wanted to get it up on the first, so that didn't happen right now. But I love reading. I've always kept track of the books I've read. And I kind of really wanted to share them, and I realized that we have a YouTube video now that talks about our life, and a big part of my life is, well, reading. So we decided to go ahead and do this. My husband recommended doing a tier list, which I needed to be told. Like, obviously I knew what a tier list was, but I didn't know what it meant in the current traditional internet sense. So he sent me to Tiermaker, the website, and we went ahead and created that. Got images of all the books I'd read. It was actually a fun process. I don't do well with ranking things, so actually putting them all in tiers was a stressful process, but it was somewhat fun. I have the 5 different tiers. S tier is the best of the best, books that stood out, either changed the way I think about things or just were so far beyond what I expected. So it was hard. I was very selective with what I put in S tier. I only think I put 3 books, yes. A tier was very good, definitely recommend. These are books that I talk about in my daily life. I will recommend them if I hear somebody say something that I think would make them think of it. Or that if you get me started talking on them, I will just talk about them. B tier was good books, but not ones I'll just talk about. Books that I absolutely loved, that I would recommend if you enjoy them, but that don't hold that same space in my brain as A tier. C tier was weird. So because I'm doing all the books I've read from January 1st through May 31st, that's 62 books. 62 books is a lot of books, and it's been over 5 months. So there were a few books that I had on my list that I had read that I went, wait, did I actually read these? So the books that went in there were ones that just didn't leave an impression, that either I just genuinely don't remember reading them or that I don't care to remember. F tier was the worst. I was also very selective with what I put in there. It was books that I don't care to keep. I will keep them because I love collecting books. I love loaning out books. I love having books that, who knows, I have a couple books in there that just aren't my genre and maybe a different altar will eventually like them. So I'll keep them, but if I had to weed out books, they would be the ones to go. But like I said, we have read 62 books within the last 5 months, and I can't talk about them all in this video. Although, if you guys want to hear about the rest of them, please let me know. I love the excuse to talk about books. So we filmed 16 different book reviews, which is the plan for going forward. Whenever we read a book, we're going to film a little minute to 2 or 3 minute segment of just talking about the book, what we liked about it, what we didn't, what stood out. So we filmed 16 out of varying, I think we did from tiers S, A, B, and C. I didn't really record any from F just because I didn't want to waste the time on that. But it was a lot of fun, and it was so hard to pare it down to these 16. I told myself it was going to be 12. And then other books kept catching my attention. But I kept it at 16. I do want to point out, if not otherwise specified, Autumn, will be fronting. I will both be the one fronting for those book reviews, and I'll be the one having read the book. On the spreadsheet where we record what we've read, we have a section titled Main Altar Fronting. Because James might read this book, but I'm very aware, but it is his book. But out of these 62 books, 3 books were read by an altar other than me. I am the reader of the system. So I didn't bother introducing myself before any of those. It's just a given. If it's not clarified, it's Autumn. If they go, hey, it's James, then hey, it's James. Things like that. So we'll go ahead and segment into those. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you want to hear more. I hope I get you guys interested in a book. I hope that at least one of these books stands out for you as something that you either want to read or that you remember having read and it brings back fond memories for you. That's my goal with this, is to open a discussion about reading and about books. Let's go into that. A Snicker of Magic by Natalie Lloyd is a book that I have loved probably for over a decade. It's, I think, middle grade fiction, but I genuinely recommend it to any age. It is a book about how there's magic all around you, and how you don't need magic to accomplish big things. It's one of the books that really solidified how magical the power of words is, how stringing words together, how each individual word has its own little bit of magic, which, as someone who wants to be a published author, this book always inspires me to write, so I read it somewhat frequently. And despite reading it somewhat frequently, I won't say the plot is convoluted, because it's not. It's really easy to follow, but there are so many different threads and so many different side plots and so many different characters with their own stories that I'm always a little surprised by something with each reread, in a good way, which is... Oh, it's incredible. I can only think of one other book that's really done that, The Westing Game, which is also an incredible book that I want to reread. But Snicker of Magic is just... It makes me smile. It was the debut novel of the author. I've read 2 other books by her. I think that's everything she's written so far. And Snicker of Magic is by far my favorite. It makes me look at the world with a happier lens, and that's a powerful thing, specifically for someone who struggles with depression. Book reminds me that there's always a little bit of color. Hey, it's James again. Yay. Not super enthusiastic about filming this, but she wants the video up on the 1st, so we're gonna get it done. At somewhere within the first month or 2 of the start of the year, I read 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was a good book. I wouldn't reread it. It's not my favorite. Nothing about it really stood out to me. There were no characters I could get attached to. There were few characters in general. I'm glad I read it. Objectively, I am truly glad I read it. But it gets C tier because I read it, and I finished it, and I was relieved that it was over. In my opinion, a good book should leave you... the best book should leave you mourning once they're done. Mourning the loss of the experience. This one was just, okay, cool, that's how that ended. Alright, we're done. Which just isn't the goal. In my mind. I don't know. I did enjoy it. I did genuinely enjoy it. I can't wait to watch the movie, but it was one and done. Not quite sure why it's a classic. I look forward to reading more C.S. Lewis once we buy some. The Last Nation by Wayne Deerfield is a book written by an active missionary who I've actually had the pleasure to meet. It is one of the books that I had the most difficult time placing on the tier list. I did decide on B, but it was very hard to decide between A and B. It is a really good book, especially because it deals with spiritual warfare, with angels and demons, and the behind-the-scenes fights that go on between them. And it's incredible because those are hard triggers for me. I've been called demonic because of the DID. I've had different altars be addressed as Satan. So anything that touches on the more supernatural side of Christianity, I handle with care. And yes, there were some hard parts in this book, but overall, my memories of this book aren't of the difficulties of reading it. It is of the conviction it gave me to move forward. And how, yes, even though that stuff does go on in realms beyond our comprehension, but we still make our choices. We still it is still our choice to make, to act, to move forward, to spread the word. And I think it's really cool because, I don't know, I got about, honestly, probably 2 or 3 chapters in, and I was like, oh shoot, what am I reading? Should I keep reading this? And I am so glad I did. I have recommended it to multiple different Christians in my life. And yeah, if you're a Christian and interested in missions at any point, I would totally recommend it. It's actually a really good example of a family moving into missions. So, yeah. So this book deserves S tier just out of sheer audacity almost. Deadpool Paws by Stephen Pedrucha. I don't know what else to say. It was the most accurate book ever. It knew its assignment and it did it perfectly. Read it. It's not nearly as vulgar as most Deadpool content. A few things that really stood out to me were, I was hoping they'd have a table of contents. But, like, at one point, it's chapter 12. And then it goes to chapter 14, and the first lines of the chapter are, yeah, we're like a hotel. We're superstitious, so we're not including 13. And then chapter 14 concludes, and chapter 13 happens, and he goes, you know what, we're not superstitious at all. And the fourth wall breaking is just incredible. The book is dedicated to the Deadpool in all of us. Because if I don't, he might get angry. This author completely understood the assignment and completely managed to get Deadpool's voice. Deadpool Paws is the title because the plot is, if I remember correctly, I don't remember the plot, I remember the amusement. That there are a bunch of puppies who are not puppies. They are shape-shifting evil monsters. And Deadpool has to track them down. And chaos ensues. I don't know what else to say. Like I said, S tier out of sheer audacity. So I got Florist Grump by Kate Collins when I was at a used bookstore, mainly because Florist Gump is my husband's favorite movie, and I just couldn't pass up the pun, especially for, like, I think it was under $2. Florist Grump is kind of your stereotypical romance novel. It's kind of your stereotypical mystery novel. They're not my favorites. It reminded me a lot of the old Hallmark movies and mysteries movies. Not a whole lot of substance, in my opinion. Just not my genre, really. It is book 17, I believe, in the Flower Shop Mysteries series by the same author. And I put it in C tier because I really don't remember anything about it. I don't remember the plot. I don't remember any of the characters' names. It was a fun, quick read, but it just wasn't my thing. I'm looking to read more mysteries, especially this kind of, like, serial mystery over and over again, but I don't think this was a great jumping in point for me. But I am still glad I bought it, just because Florist Grump, I mean, she gets points for her name. How to Train Your Dragon by Cressida Cowell is hilarious. It is objectively a kid's fiction, and if you go into it expecting a whole lot of substance, you'll be a little disappointed unless you're a kid. It is very well written for 8 to 10-year-olds. Another thing to watch out for is this book is nothing like the movie. Almost hilariously opposite of the movie. It is also the start of a series, which I put How to Train Your Dragon in A tier, which might not have been the fairest thing. It's probably a bit more of a B book, but it's hilarious and it deserves an exception, and I remember enjoying the later books so much more than the first. Another hilarious thing is throughout the book there is art that is drawn by the main character, Hiccup, and it is incredible art if you imagine that a young boy drew it. It is absolutely incredible. It has some crude humor that just isn't my thing, but in general, I absolutely love the series, and I'd recommend it to anyone, especially who has young kids, and who wants to have a good laugh while they share that with their family. But I'm planning on getting and reading the later ones, so we'll probably hear more about that then. But yeah, go into it after watching the movie and prepare to have a good laugh at the differences. So, my English class for this spring semester, one of the required reading books was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Which, before I actually talk about the book, I want to show the edition. Look at how pretty this book is. It's gorgeous. It's like, might be like leather. And it's got shiny, and it has a bookmark, which, always incredible. But yeah, I couldn't find an image of that, so I wanted to show off my pretty book because it was expensive, but it was a textbook, and they wanted us to get this edition, so I didn't have an option. But, the book was objectively good. I didn't care for the writing style. I didn't care for the way it was written, but it was a great story. Extremely topical. I started reading it a couple of months after I started having panic attacks about what was going on in our country and where our country was going and wanting to leave the country. So reading that book at that time kind of screwed with me a bit. Also wasn't expecting it to be as graphic as it was. I wound up dropping the semester, didn't finish it, so I finished the book in my own time, all at once, because that's how I read. So I had no warnings for anything. One of the things that really screwed me up is, I mean, I've read a lot of dystopian, but never a book that talks about the generation where dystopia happened. And one of the things that really screwed me up was they tried to run. They tried to flee. They tried to get out of the country, but they were too late. They were caught, which is the thing that scares me the most. And I know I'm probably being paranoid, but hey, I don't usually have a whole lot of paranoia, and I know I'm going to call this justifiable paranoia. But the book was great. The ending screwed with me. The realization of the way the whole thing had been written and why. Oh, it deserves S tier. It deserves it. It unsettled me in a way that very few books ever have. It is a book I'm planning on rereading because knowing everything will make it that much more intense. I will say, my biggest critique, I know I said I didn't care for the writing style, there are very rarely any quotation marks for the dialogue because a lot of the dialogue is said after the fact, like it's all narrated essentially, and when they do he said, she said, essentially, they don't use quotation marks, which was somewhat exhausting to read, but so worth it. So, brace yourself if you read it, but read it. It's incredible. The Wednesday Wars by Gary D. Schmidt is a middle grade fiction that I read when I was probably around the age it was geared to, middle grade. I don't know the ages, I'm bad with timing. But, it's a really good coming-of-age story. It is set during the Vietnam War, and something that really stuck with me about the book is, from the outside, the main character's family is that picture-perfect, happy husband and wife, 2 kids, picket fence family, but it's not. There's still hardships, there's still trauma. There's no actual abuse, but there is emotional neglect. There's still pain. There's still, am I loved feelings. And it is a really good story of found family, I guess. Not quite found family, because there is no true found family, but it is the people in your lives making your life a little better. And I think that's really cool. The whole plot is this kid he kind of has to stay, not after school, but he has some one-on-one time with his teacher that's unavoidable, and she makes him study Shakespeare. And at first he hates it, but then he falls in love with it, which is more than I could ever do. Shakespeare is not my favorite. But, and him using it to grow into, as all of this is going on around him with the Vietnam War, it deals with his trials throughout the school year, and it's delineated month by month of the school year. And it's just a really good story of, at one point, his sister leaves. She's fed up with family, so she goes and sets off on her own. And she comes back because she ran out of money, fell in with a bad crowd. And she comes back, and the father's all, well, did you find yourself? And the main character, the brother, responds, no, she found me. And it was really powerful, the love of siblings. But it was something that I really enjoyed. I would totally recommend it, not just for middle graders, but for adults. It's one of those stories that leaves you feeling fulfilled. And that even though the world is crappy, it always ends up looking up. So I keep a book of every book I've read this year, and Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine is on that list. But I have no memory of having read it this year. I put it in C tier, which I don't think is really fair, because I know it's a book I love. But I just have no memory of reading it. Not sure if I read it when I was sick or what, but it is a great book. It is what the movie Enchanted is based on, but the two are very, very different. One of my best friends, was one of her favorite books growing up, and she absolutely hates the movie because of how different they are. I honestly read the book after having seen the movie, did not even realize that they were connected, and I love them both. But I can understand how if I was looking for a movie adaptation of the book, I'd have been disappointed. But I don't have much to say about it. I would recommend reading it. It's a great twist on a fairy tale. It's very much, the book is more so a twist on Cinderella than the movie was. Yeah, I love the book. I probably would have put it in A tier if I actually remembered it, but right now it's going to go in C tier. If I reread it and have a more clear memory of it, I'm sure I'll bump it up, but totally recommend it. Ignore the fact that it's in C tier. Hey everyone, it's Leah. I was asked to record regarding a book that I read called Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly. It was a book that we started reading right after I had first fronted, like within the first week. Autumn had been planning on reading it, but I kind of commandeered the body and just got sucked into the story. Not even the story, the visuals, the descriptions, It's a gorgeous book. It is a gorgeous story. The pictures it summons into your mind are just gorgeous. It's a good book. I'm not even quite sure what tier I put it on anymore, but it did fall off a bit at the end. I was a little disappointed with the conclusion. It wasn't what I had been expecting. Overall, it is an incredible book. I recommend it. It had some really poignant things to say about a lot of things, really, but one thing that really stood out to me and to the system as a whole was... Actually, I'm going to take a second to go look up the quote. It's talking about how in the middle of the night things always seem bleak. And the exact quote that I internalized, actually, is, should you ever decide in those small dark hours to hang yourself, well, that is your choice. But don't hunt for the rope until morning. By then, you'll find a much better use for it. Something about that, as I wasn't around when the system was suicidal, when Autumn was suicidal, but it's such good advice. It's okay to feel the way you're feeling, but wait to make any decisions. Sorry, Autumn's very near because that line spoke to her a lot. But overall, the book was just, no matter how hopeless things get, you can always change your own fate. You can always find another way. I don't know, it's been a few months since I've read it, but I recommend it, and it is a book that I intend to reread, probably within the next couple of years. Not even the system, not even Autumn, I, Leah, want to reread this book because it was that gorgeous. I've been working on learning how to draw and bring what's in my head onto paper, and I long to draw a few of the scenes from this book. It is one of the reasons I started learning to draw. Totally recommend it. I think I've been talking for a bit longer than probably should have been, but it is late because it's always late when they ask me to record. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but alright, I'll let you guys get back to it. The Worst Night Ever by Dave Barry is the sequel to his book, The Worst Class Trip Ever. Both of them are very good and B tier, but The Worst Night Ever is getting specially mentioned because it's a good book. And you want to know how I know it's a good book? Because let me show you the back of this book. You see those? They're ants. I don't do ants. I don't like ants. And as you can imagine from the fact that there are ants on the art of this book, ants actually play a somewhat major role. They are one of the active threats of the book. But it's a good enough book that it's still B tier, despite having ants. And that's really all I have to say about that. If you want to know what I'm talking about, go read the book. It doesn't need to be read after The Worst Class Trip Ever, but The Worst Class Trip Ever is still a very good book. So yeah, ants. Not fun. Close to Famous by Joan Bauer has been one of my favorite books since I was a little girl. I love this author in general. Everything she writes is so powerful. But Close to Famous genuinely changed the trajectory of my life. It is the book that inspired me to pursue my love of baking all the way to culinary school, to actually do it. It's another middle grade fiction book, but it's so much more. Every book by this author, just about every one of them that I've read at least, it's never the picture perfect home. The start of this book is Foster, the main character, and her mom getting in their car and driving away because the mom's abusive boyfriend got physically abusive and now they're running. So it starts off without pulling any punches. A bunch of different chapters throughout the book end with a little cook's tip. And the cook's tip for the first chapter is bake every day. If you have to leave town fast, you'll always have something good to eat in the car. Which, ouch. Like, a character can't be older than, she's probably around 10? I'm not quite sure how old the character is, but no matter how old, that's rough. And you find out about midway through the book that she can't read, and that every teacher ever has told her that if she just applied herself more, she'd be a better student, that she needs to work harder, and nobody has ever even realized that the problem is that she doesn't know how to read. Nobody's ever bothered to teach her. So she finds somebody who is willing to teach her, and she's learning throughout the book, and a famous chef that she idolizes ends up in a coma, I believe, and Foster is like, I want to write a letter to this person, and it says, this is what I would write, and it's this gorgeous letter about how this man has changed her life and inspired her, and then it says, but I didn't know how to write all that down. Slowly I wrote what I could. Dear Sonny, you are not alone. And I'm almost crying just reading that bit because I cry every time I read this book. This is a girl who all her life has been told that she is not good enough. But she is. And she just needs people around her to see that. And more importantly, she needs to see it herself. Like I said, this is a book that has genuinely changed my life. So, absolutely go read it. Close to Famous by Joan Bauer. Go read any book by Joan Bauer. But this one is powerful. Not A Sparrow Falls by Linda Nichols is quite possibly one of my favorite standalone Christian fiction books. It does a great job of showing how God can help with hopelessness and with thinking that you've made too many mistakes in your life and that you're too far gone. I will say I've read the book twice, and every time I get probably about a quarter or a third of the way in, and I go, wait, this seems like toxic Christianity. I might not finish this. But it calls out toxic Christianity of being Christian just in appearances, of being the perfect Christian household and not being willing to show flaws. It calls that out in, not in a in-your-face way, but in a, hey, this is the thing, but there's a better thing kind of way, which I think is really cool. No context, but this book made me absolutely certain that I would never, ever do drugs, specifically meth. I already wasn't going to do them, but never, ever. I physically cringe while reading certain scenes from an addict's point of view. Never, ever. But it's such a good book about how just trusting God in little ways can make your life and the lives of those around you so much better. One of the main characters, she at some point, she isn't willing to better her own life. She doesn't think it deserves to be bettered. But somebody else needs help, and she's willing to help her along, and that gets the main character where she needs to be. And I think that's so true of so many people, not even Christians, of I'm not worth it, but I'll do it for you. Or at least that's how I feel a lot of the time. My husband, I have become a better Christian because I'm trying to help improve my husband's walk with God. Because I want to see him improve, I am improving myself. And this book embodied that in a lot of ways. But yeah, absolutely recommend. It is heavy Christian fiction if that's not your thing. If that's not your thing, I still recommend the book, but I doubt you'll buy it. I have a pretty book. Look at how shiny it is. Look at the edges of the book. I was very happy. I went to Second and Charles, the used bookstore I love, with my parents one time, and my dad was like, well, you can buy 2 books. Which isn't usual. Usually he says a price amount. But he said 2 books, and we get into the store, and on first display is this book, and I love dragons. I have a shirt that says Easily Distracted by Dragons book, so combine the 2, and it's hopeless. But I saw this book, and I fell in love with the premise, with the title, with the cover. It was $20, which is very rare for that bookstore. But I think it's a first edition. So it was reasonable. But my dad said 2 books, not $10 or something like that. So I was talking with my mom, and I was like, I feel like I'd be almost taking advantage. And she was like, no, do it. So I got the book, and it was incredible. I almost put it in S tier. I wound up putting it in A tier. But this book was good. It ended on a cliffhanger. Not like a, oh god, I need the next book cliffhanger, but the story's not complete. This section has concluded, but there is more to come kind of cliffhanger. And I'm trying very hard to ignore the book because there's not a sequel out yet. So honestly, I couldn't even really tell you a whole lot about it. I forgot as much as I could, and I'm going to reread it when I get the sequel. But I remember loving it, and I remember convincing my mom to buy it. I think she has bought it. But yeah, dragons, Mars. I was hoping it would be a sci-fi book, because I'm trying to read more sci-fi, but it's just fantasy set in space. Not that I'm complaining. But yeah, it's a pretty book. The Ward by Jordana Frankel, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, was so much better than I was expecting. It is a book I bought on a whim. I was at a used bookstore, Second and Charles, that I love, and I went to the young adult section very last minute. I already had more books in my cart and was a little over budget. And I saw this book, and I was just like, I read the back, I was like, this sounds cool, and I talked my husband into letting me spend a little bit more than I probably should have, and I went ahead and grabbed it. So I didn't have a whole lot of thought to it. It was cool cover art, and it was a cool concept, so I went ahead. And this is an almost 500-page book. I devoured it, I think, within 24 hours. I could not put it down. And I will warn you guys, it ends on a cliffhanger, and you need to get the next book, which I haven't yet, and I'm furious about that. But I was so excited to read it. It is not my normal genre. I'm not really that big of a dystopian fan, but it had some great moral dilemmas of how to actually make the world a better place and weighing the pros and cons of there's always a downside. There's always a compromise needed to be made. Someone's always unhappy. I'm trying desperately to get my husband to read it, mainly because this book is very similar to the Fast and Furious franchise. It is, the highlighted text on the back of the book is Renata Dane is a daredevil drag racer. And it's about street drag racing in an mostly underwater Manhattan, where the main character is a mole for the cops, who ends up turning on them, essentially. There's so many parallels, and I need to talk to someone about it, and my husband won't read it yet. He says he will, and I'm sure he will, but oh, it's so good, and I don't even like Fast and Furious, and I don't even know. This book was incredible. Hey, it's James. I'm filming for once. I finished Animal Farm yesterday by George Orwell. Yeah, that was a trip. It was a trip. I knew what it was going into it, but I was not expecting it to be so hopeless. That's the best descriptive word for that book, is just hopeless. It is a great classic to read. It has a lot of political analogies, but that shit was hopeless, and I low-key felt a little dirty after reading it, which was kind of the point, but I gave it a B because it is objectively a good book, possibly even a great book, but I don't want to talk about it. It was rough. I don't even know if I'd recommend it. I mean, yeah, go read it. It's a classic, but I was not prepared for that shit. I finished that rehearsal the other night. Right before break ended, I had to get back to work, and I was just like, why? What is the point of life anymore? But yeah, Animal Farm fucks you up. Alright, I hope everyone had as much fun watching those as I did recording them. The plan is to do a monthly video on the 1st of every month, which is why we got this one up on June 1st, and every book that we read within June will be on July 1st's video. And that way we can have the space to talk about all of the books that we've read, because I love talking about my books, and I hated having to decide which ones not to talk about. I did want to put out here, does anyone have any suggestions for books? I spend way too much money at used bookstores, and I always have a list of books that I'm looking for when I go there before I actually just start browsing. So if anyone has any good suggestions, I'd love to add those to my list and go looking for them, so you guys can hear me review them. Any genre works. I'm trying to expand. Like I said, I've been reading a lot of middle grade fiction. I'm trying to read a lot more young adult, or actually just adult, but I'll be honest, the covers of young adult and kids fiction are just way more attention-catching for me than most adult fiction. So I tend to read, because I have such a limited amount of money, I shamelessly judge books by their cover. Like, I don't judge it by them, but that's the point of a cover, is to catch an eye. But like I said, this was a lot of fun. I'll see you guys on the 1st of July. If I do go to the bookstore and get a good haul at some point, I might record myself just going through those before I read them. But I can't think of anything else to say. I recorded this all in one go. This was great. This was actually fun. Apparently recording about things that you're passionate about is the way to go. But we're going to link the playlist here with all of the book-related videos, so yeah, come see what we've done. Come see who's doing what and reading what. Bye, everyone. I recommend you go read more.